Well, good morning and good afternoon, and for any time you're listening, welcome to our TicketForce webinar today. We are talking about the pricing wars and strategies to get it right the first time. I'm Lynne King-Smith. I'm the CEO here at TicketForce, and pricing is something that clients far and across the board are talking about. We get asked this question on a regular basis. There's a lot of frustration in the market from the buyer side. And I'm here today going one-on-one with one of ticketing's brightest minds, my friend Greg Fahy. Greg has a lot of experience in the ticketing market, actually worldwide, which is why, Greg, I love to bring you in because you give us a perspective outside of North America. Greg has worked in Australia, South America, Dubai, Europe, Asia, and he brings that perspective in to the North American market and gives us some fresh things to think about. At TEG Worldwide and Ticketek, and is also the CTO of Softtix. Greg has worked with world-class events like the Australian Open, and he's here today to talk about what he's seen work and not work with you. So Greg, welcome, and where do you find yourself today?
Thanks, Lynn. I'm back home after a great vacation, so back in the Netherlands, which is home base for me these days.
Wonderful. Well, you know, how we price tickets, we're finding is not as simple as P1, P2, P3. We're finding if we get it too low, tickets head into the secondary market, then prices get inflated. As event promoters and venues, we miss out on those sometimes. If we get it too high, then we get people all pissed off at us who bought early. And we've had some recent messes. You know, the Riot Fest was a challenge where they offered deeply discounted passes and angered their early buyers. We got Broadway tickets that rise and fall continually, and that's now spreading its way across North America. So again, pricing is front and center. So let's jump right in and just start off with talking about the theory of dynamic pricing strategies. So there are some people that want to use dynamic pricing strategies, which simply means obviously changeable prices, right? We don't get in there and just decide what's a price and stay with it through the sales, the whole sales cycle. If we're using that just to keep tickets with primary buyers and keep it out of the secondary market, does that work? What do you see?
Well, it can work up to a point. I mean, you know, it's been a number of years now that inventory owners, so promoters, producers, and ticketing companies and venues all working together have tried some of these methods to try and price tickets in a way that keeps them with the primary buyer, but you still see some pretty strong and thriving secondary markets around the place. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that those secondary markets are not always driven by true availability of tickets and the pricing of those tickets. You know, quite often it happens that people buy tickets in a secondary market because they're simply not aware that that's what they're doing. They're buying from people that do a lot of search advertising and who get themselves up at the top of search results for certain ticket searches, and people buy from them thinking they're buying a ticket from a primary ticketing agent. So that happens as well outside of the whole pricing thing.
True. Yeah.
But there's some interesting stuff going on around the world, you know, in terms of government stepping in and legislating the secondary market somewhat because they're wanting to protect consumers from these circumstances.
Yeah. So it could work as a deterrent, but it's certainly not the whole problem of tickets popping up on secondary and people buying from that source really without even being aware of it. That's more of a discovery and a search issue.
It is, and a customer awareness thing. And I think even, you know, as we get into this discussion about pricing, I think you'll hear me repeat often and loud that you need to tell your customers what you're going to do with your pricing strategy and help them understand it, and help them understand why you're trying to you know, deal with secondary market as an issue, or, you know, to price your tickets in a certain way. You really have to communicate to customers really clearly about what your strategy is.
Yeah, and that's good to remember. And I'm a proponent frequently in these conversations. We talk about everybody but the fan oftentimes, and
Hmm.
everybody's role in ticketing, from venue to the ticketing company. There's the artists, there's promoters, oftentimes more than one promoter involved. And I think in the live event market as a whole, the fan, they're the ones that are rising up. They're the angry ones right now, by and
Hmm.
large. And some of it is justified because we're supposed to be doing this all for them, but they're often forgotten in these strategies. So communicating with them up front is key. I mean, that brings a question up when we're trying to price a show. um, are we trying to get it right for the market? Are we trying to get it right for the artist and maximize the dollar or the team? Are we trying to set pricing that works in the market as a whole? Where do you think we should start when we start thinking about trying to get pricing right on an event?
Well, I think that there is some middle ground there. I think obviously artists are needing to maximize, and producers of theatre shows and sports teams, they're needing to maximize their gates. Sports is a little bit different because you have TV as a revenue source in the mix, but
Right, right.
uh, you know, concerts, music artists, they live and die by live touring these days. They don't make any money at all from music publishing, streaming, and downloads and so on. They make very little off that, and so they have to tour to make money. And so, it is important as an industry that we uh, develop ways of supporting those artists in maximizing their earning capacity, because um, you know they need to be able to make a living from this, um, as well as doing it for love and artistic merits and all those other things.
Right.
If there's no industry there, then people won't tour, and in the long term that will be a bad thing for fans and for the
Hmm.
industry. So you do need to as an industry participant, I think, have an eye on making sure that each player in the industry is making a fair dollar for what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, on the flip side, I think you've got a lot of and you raised some of the recent examples, but you've really got this continuous sort of mistreatment of fans, and it's really about not being clear with them about what you're going to do. If you're
Huh.
going to come out with really high pricing at the start to try and minimize the impact of the secondary market, um, and you're going to lower prices later, to try and pick up the people the fans who maybe want to go and see a show but don't value it as much as a hardcore fan does for a
Hmm.
particular artist, then I think if you're upfront with customers about that, then you can avoid a lot of the angst and the acrimony about late discounts and all of those sorts of things. I mean, um, people are used to this and have been used to it for years in the airline industry,
Hmm.
um, in the hotel industry, and there are some differences there. I mean, airlines, there's often a much more direct um, sales channel between the airline and the customer. Not always,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
generally more direct than entertainment ticketing, and they control their own inventory, so they can price it whatever they want.
That's
Um,
true.
but but people know, no one gets on a plane and sits down to the person in the seat next to them and says, "Oh, so how much did you pay for your flight,
I
to
know.
LA
I
today?"
know. I always
It just
say
doesn't
that
happen.
too. It's crazy that I think it's just because they're going back in and looking and seeing or something. I mean, um, that idea of in entertainment, people getting mad if a ticket has been purchased, and then there's a deal offered later. I don't have a good solution for that other than like what you're saying. Hey, if you want to be sure, so is the message something like, if you might be paying premium pricing right now, but you're going to be sure you're going to get a seat and you're going to be sure you're going to get a
Yeah,
good seat.
yeah, yeah.
Is
I,
that kind of how you
I, I
see
think
that
that's
messaging going?
I think that's part of it. I think if you're going to do something where you're intentionally holding back inventory, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later
Yeah.
in more detail. But if you're going to
Yeah.
hold things back and price them differently in the future, then say up front and just say to the customer, you can buy now at this price. You guarantee you've got a seat. It'll be a great seat for that event that you want to go to. We'll be releasing other seats later on.
Yeah. And we don't really
Further
know what the
back,
price is going to be, right? We don't know if there'll be higher or
correct.
lower at that point. Huh.
Correct, and that's exactly what you see. When you go to book a flight, it says, okay, the flight today is $150,
Yeah.
and we will be changing that price, tomorrow or the next day. You see some airlines now offering a price lock-in option, so you can pay
Interesting.
$10 today, and you get that price guaranteed for the next 24 hours. So you can sort of take a bit of time to make up your mind about
Yeah.
whether you want to book that flight, and lock in a price at a certain point. But there's no one saying, hey, this flight is $150 today, and in 3 weeks we'll be offering exactly the same seat on the same flight for 150 as well. That's just not going to happen. But they tell
No.
you, they say up front, the price will
Yeah.
change.
They do. That's true. And I mean, why are we not doing that or are you seeing that much more in the world market? I'm not seeing that here all that much where I feel like in the North American market, we're throwing stuff out there and we're not telling anybody anything. The assumption is you better buy if you want a ticket at any cost at this point. I don't feel like our market is really communicating very well with fans to say, we're holding seats back or we're not sure what's going to happen, but here's today's price.
Yeah, I don't see much of it being done. I've seen a few attempts, but generally, I would say as an industry, we like to keep our secrets from customers about how things work
Mm,
and how things are going. And there's a lot of players in the value chain. You've got from the
yeah,
artist to management to a booking agent to a promoter, a local promoter, a venue, a ticketing company. There's a lot of steps in the chain, a lot of people making decisions along the way, and each with a view of what information they think is shareable with a customer.
hmm,
In terms of how many seats are available, how many tickets are going to be on sale to the public versus sponsors or suite holders and all of these other sorts of VIP fan clubs, all of these other people that are in the mix buying tickets.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and certainly, we know that it's absolutely the case that there are at least promoters and artists probably, and others that are putting tickets directly into the secondary market. We know that that's happened over the years,
yep, yep. That's
and
that's
that's
the
not
secret part, like
right. And
there's a
they're
shroud of
definitely not telling
mystery.
customers. Yeah, so it is a challenge for the industry to work up to this point about being a bit more straight with the customer about how things work and what's going on, and how the ticket sales for an event will play out.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
I think you can
because
try.
there's so many people involved in that chain, if you were going to do that kind of open communication, you've got to get, all three or four parties to agree
Right.
that you're going to have transparent pricing, which I've seen artists push for.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get it wrong too. And they say, well, I want everybody to be able to afford my ticket. And,
Hmm.
if you're Lady Gaga and your top ticket is $59, you're going to create a secondary market by doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there are some markets where that strategy can work, and there are others where it's a little bit tougher.
Hmm.
We saw it. We saw it with the last couple of Ed Sheeran tours down
Yep.
in Australia and New Zealand, where every ticket was $99.
Hmm.
The whole house. He was doing outdoor stadiums, so
Okay.
they were decent sized shows, sort of 30 or 40,000 tickets per show. But he had room in the schedule to put on extra dates. So the secondary market exists because there's a demand there. There are people who want a ticket and can't buy it. Or at least that's what it is in a lot of cases, other than
Yep.
the awareness issue we talked about earlier. If you've got the capability on a tour to put on extra shows to keep the supply coming,
Yeah, that's
then
true.
you will keep people away from the secondary market. you obviously have to have a level of confidence, especially if you're doing outdoor stadiums. If you put a second show on, you don't want to sell 5,000 tickets for that, because it's not going to be a good look
Yeah.
playing to an empty stadium. But the right artist at the right time can definitely take that approach. I know you two did it in the past, maybe
Yep.
8 or 9 years ago. They did a single price house, or they did some behind the stage tickets that were really cheap, and that
Hmm.
sort of stuff. So you can do it in the right place at the right time. But if
Yep.
you can't keep the supply coming, then it's going to be a tough strategy.
Well, for anybody that doesn't know, how did those $99 events work out for Ed Sheeran? Did they end up with a bunch of stuff on secondary, or were they pretty effective at controlling that?
They were pretty effective. And secondary is, yeah, it's a different kind of thing in Australia. I mean, Ticketmaster is really the only one
Mm,
operating a
with
genuine
their own,
secondary
yeah,
market
yeah.
site with their own,
Hmm.
and they do that. For them, it's the way they make money in Australia and New Zealand, because they don't have a lot of share in the concert market down there, which is unusual for them.
It is.
And in that case, the view is that the promoter had um, made an arrangement with Ticketmaster to not have their event on the site. So in
Wow.
that setup down there, they have to list the event before someone can put their own tickets on there. So
Got it.
that's how that was controlled, and
Huh.
that's a valid way of going about it. The promoter had some levers that they could pull in terms of commercials on other things they were working on, and they kept it out of the secondary market. And you still get, you'll get college students selling tickets on eBay, and
Yeah.
um, some organized sort of, not really sort of secondary market size, but
Yeah, they may not even
selling.
know, to some case, there may not have been a trail to even find out what some of those
Yeah,
tickets actually sold for. But, a $99 ticket is, that was carefully thought out as far as branding and affordability
yeah,
and all of that. So,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, and, they were thinking of the fan, obviously, which is always good. But
Mm,
well, let's talk a little bit about slow ticketing. You and I both saw an article last week that came out. We're back down under again about the Katy Perry event in Auckland, New Zealand. Um,
mhm.
and that was a situation where the organizers slashed prices because sales weren't doing what they wanted.
Right.
And they really angered their buyers. And in the particular article we saw, called that slow ticketing. And to quote it, slow ticketing is the latest trend in the ticketing industry, meaning that the highest price tickets are sold first. And as the concert approaches, the prices are slashed. Katy Perry fans are now facing the consequences. Is that what slow ticketing actually is? I mean, tell us about it from your point of view and your expertise.
Right. So the idea is that, um, traditionally with a really popular concert, you put it on sale, it sells out in 10 minutes or an hour, or
Hmm.
whatever, your record on sale is. And, then right away, there's tickets going straight into the secondary market. So you know that some percentage of those tickets were bought by people who intended to resell them all along for
Hmm.
profit. So the idea with slow ticketing is to reverse that, um, that tradition of trying to sell everything as fast as possible, and to release your inventory slowly over time, so that you've always got some supply to compete against that secondary market. So someone who comes in right at that on sale and buys tickets to resell them for profit is taking a much bigger risk, because they know they're going to be competing, or they are going to be competing against, primary market tickets that will continue to be available
Right,
over a period of time. And that period of time might be a day, it might be over a month.
right.
It would depend on the event, and you really have to, I think carefully about, the artist, the venue, the fan base, and all of those sorts of factors that affect pricing and on-sale strategy, in terms of how slow you want your ticketing to go. It doesn't mean you have to slash prices. You could do it with a single price house and just
Yeah.
release the inventory over time. But the really important thing is you have to tell customers that it's going to happen, because after that first release, you know, if you haven't got any more inventory on sale at that point in time, people will think it's sold out. And so
Right.
you've got to explain to the customer up front, this is what we're doing. We're going to release our seats progressively over the next 2 weeks. And you can keep checking back, and you know, we'll let you know. I think having an ongoing communication channel with those customers is really important. So if you're getting them to sign up for notifications, if they're, you know, following your Twitter, your Instagram, whatever, to get notifications as inventory is going to be released. But they
Right.
have to know up front, otherwise it just doesn't work. They think it's sold out on that first release, and then they go to the secondary market. So you have to communicate the strategy.
Yeah. And are you building buzz that way by dragging out, you know, the demand for tickets and, you know, people keeping an eye on it? Have you ever seen it backfire where it kills the buzz and nobody jumps in there? You know, is that the strategy is to build the buzz rather than kill it, obviously?
Yeah, it certainly builds. I think you have to. There's some risks, right? One risk
Hmm.
is you're making the customer work too hard to get a ticket. That if you're making them come back 5 or 6 times over a period, then it might feel like it's too much hard work
Yeah.
to get that ticket, where they used to just come in, try their hardest to buy as fast as possible, and hope that
Yeah.
they got lucky. The other risk you're taking, you know, on the commercial side is you're going to get less of a sense of the demand for your show. If you sell out the whole thing really quickly, then you know it's going well. If you sell 70% on the first day, then you know you're going to have some marketing work to do to get the other 30%
Well, it does kind
sold.
of tell you that. That's true,
Um,
you know. And if you've got the right tools where you can see how many people are coming in, you know, so if you've released,
yeah,
you know, 5,000 tickets and you can see you've got, you know, 40,000 people sitting there waiting to buy those or at least to take a
yeah,
look, you can make some
yeah,
decisions on the fly as well.
ab absolutely. So that's on the technology side. That is really important, that you understand not just how many people are buying, but how many people are wanting to buy at
Hmm.
each point in time. Um, and and you have a way of knowing who those people are. So you want them signed in,
Yep.
um, you want them signed up to an alert so that you can get back to them and say, you know, okay, next Monday 9 a.m., next Saturday 10 a.m. that, you know, this is when the next release is coming up.
Yeah.
Um, you know, those things are really important from a technology point of view, and a operational process point of view, that you've got that in place.
It's kind of removing the shroud again. You know, you've just, the old way was just sort of this, you know, throw everything out there, hope you got the pricing right, hope you sell it
Mm,
out, and and then the secondary market will tell you if you screwed up or not, you know. Um,
yeah,
this is, we have now a lot, you know, way better tools. You used to have to just look at a physical line of people around the building and know we might need to add another
yeah,
show, you know.
yeah,
And so, you know, technology and analytics is certainly helping, um, you know, the decision makers in that process, but we've got to be willing to remove the shroud a little bit and put that technology in the right people's hands so that they could be part of that decision making, um,
yeah,
process and see what's really going on and understand it as well.
yeah.
Um, so that's key. The communication. I think, you know, I was thinking about how, a lot of the festivals, especially like in the EDM market, they really do a version of slow ticketing and they tell you what the prices are going to be generally, and they go up. So it's like, it's a
Yeah,
little more like airlines, you know, their first batch is this day and you know, they're $300 and then we're going to wait 3 weeks and they're going to be 450, you know. Um,
yeah,
and they can get by with that because of insane demand, obviously.
yeah, yeah.
But that really, maybe, I don't know if that, do you know anything about that market or why they, did they kind of start the idea of slow ticketing and selling things in phases, or did they pick it up from somewhere else, or maybe because it's a worldwide tool? I mean, I'm wondering where that came from, and if we're still seeing that in that market particularly.
They've definitely been doing it for a long time. I mean, I was living and working here in the Netherlands back sort of 15, 16 years ago. in ticketing, and that dance party festival,
Yep.
music festival genre is really big here.
Yeah.
And they were doing that stuff back then, 15, 16 years ago.
Huh.
And part of it was rewarding their existing customers. So people who had come to that festival the previous year would normally be the ones that had first option, kind of
Yep.
like sports teams reward their season ticket holders, right? Um,
True.
so that was part of it. But it does, again, they would be really clear with their customers and say, we're starting the pricing here. This is the early bird pricing. It's the
Yeah, they're
cheapest time to
very
buy a
good about
ticket.
that. They get that
Yeah,
part, you know.
yeah, and they say up front, in 2 weeks' time the prices will be going up
Yep.
to X, and then 2 weeks after that they'll be going up to Y.
Mm-hmm.
And that drives demand at every step, because people want to buy as cheap a ticket as possible.
Right.
Um, and they do have different levels of inventory. They'll have tickets that have access to VIP rooms and those
Right.
sorts of things. But
Yeah.
just like music festivals, most tickets are equal. Unlike a seated venue where there's good seats and not so good seats, and people have different opinions about seat quality in different venues for
Mm-hmm.
different types of shows. But music festivals and dance festivals are a little bit different in that
Yeah, it's pretty
they're
much a
just a
big GA
big open
room,
venue. Yeah, yeah. So that pricing strategy works really well for them.
Yeah.
And the reverse is also a valid option, and one that gets back to that earlier point about making sure the artist gets their full value, and that fans pay a price that matches with their expectations of what they want to pay for that artist. You can go the reverse and price from the top and bring it down. But I think, again, you've got to tell the customer what's happening.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff, Greg, we're talking about some pretty major events here. You've worked on some pretty big stuff, Australian Open.
Mhm.
We're talking about Katy Perry, some pretty big events. Um, what do you see? How does this scale to, a smaller house, a 700 or 1,000 or 1,500 seat, venue that's doing a comedy show, or, a smaller concert? How do we scale? Does slow ticketing work, when you get down to a smaller scale? Because what we see typically is, um, you get they put things on sale and they get worried because the demand isn't as high as they thought. And some of these
Oh,
smaller houses, they took a chance on a show or something like that, and then all of a sudden they start chopping prices, and then you've got everybody angry. And what do you think works in some of these smaller venues if they just really don't know what demand is going to be?
yeah, I think it's definitely tougher um, in a smaller venue, and if you feel like you're taking some risk on a particular show, you're not sure how it'll play in that market. It might be an up and comer, it might be someone um, who's been on hiatus for a while and is back into touring, or there's all sorts of reasons
Hmm.
why something might be a bit of a risk.
There's a lot of that going
Um,
around right now,
right,
especially
and
with
and
comedians
again,
like coming back in. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So,
yeah, yeah, I've seen some of that news in the
yes,
last few days, and it's
yep.
yeah, it's I think a lot of those venues really rely on selling concessions to make their money on shows that come through their venues, especially where
Yeah.
they're taking some risk in the show itself. So they get, I think, rightfully nervy when things aren't selling as quickly as they expected. And they're if it's the venue that's driving the pricing, then
Hmm.
they're because their economic drivers are different. Dropping the ticket price is not necessarily a problem for them in terms of what they earn. It
Hmm.
will always have some effect, but they
Right.
want people in the door. People parking in their car parks and buying beer at the bar,
Yeah.
um, and buying merchandise, and so that can be a tough place. But I think um, being you know, and that might be a scenario where reverse pricing can work, where you say, okay, we're putting the best seats on sale, and we're putting them at this high, you know, we're starting at this price, and every hour or every day the price is going to drop $10 or something. You know,
Yeah.
whatever strategy you come up with, that can work. And then I think if you're in the venue shoes, I think you need to work with your partners in the show and say, let's come up with a pricing strategy that maximizes what we can make from our ticket pricing with the fans who will absolutely come and see this person regardless of, you know, whatever it is that makes them a risk, and figure out, you know, the economics so that we share in the upside of that, and that way.
Right.
Everyone's aligned, you know, then the venue and the ticketing agent and the promoter are all aligned on pricing, rather than each having different drivers that influence their pricing decisions.
I would love to see some of the mid-size venues, try slow ticketing, um, from the perspective of being able to create a buzz, especially if they don't think they've got an event that's going to necessarily sell out,
Mm-hmm.
to just withhold some inventory so people aren't looking at that going, I've got 2,000 seats and there's a ton of them open and there's no demand there. If they went and said, well, we're only releasing this group of 50 seats today. These are the best seats. And they did it that way. They could create a little more demand in a smaller venue,
Yeah,
by not releasing everything at once. Because then, a lot of times based on, if you're using an open seat map and things like that, if people can get a good idea and take a look and see what's available, they can often be put off by that and say, well, I got plenty of time. But if you're holding something back, even if you're communicating with them, here's our best 50 seats today, um, and you leave a little mystique to it and say, we're coming back in a day or a week, and we'll release more tickets. But if you want these, here you go.
yeah.
I don't see people doing that much, and I'd love to see, how some smaller mid-sized venues would work with that, because I think it would help them rather than just throwing everything out there, guessing on the price, and then having a bunch of empty seats and slashing it later. There's got to be a better
Yeah,
way than that.
yeah, for sure, for
So
sure.
yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on secondary market. It's just really contentious and hot here.
Hmm.
It was a couple weeks ago that where you're sitting over in Europe, Ticketmaster actually shut down their secondary sites. So it's heating up worldwide. Um,
Yeah.
what are you seeing in other markets outside of North America? Has anybody, solved the problem? I think you said Australia, New Zealand doesn't really have one because, it's a pretty tight market. But what are you seeing across the world, or any observations on how you can serve the customer? I mean, if it comes back to the customer, I hate to see, as a consumer, I don't want to see StubHub go away, because I do use that to buy
Mhm.
tickets for, events like if I fly into town, say, and there's a baseball stadium. If everything on the primary side, because of season tickets, is fairly sold out and I'm up at the third deck,
Yeah,
I want to come in and buy somebody's season tickets that are good seats and they can't go that night. That's, in
yeah,
my mind, what the secondary market is, how it serves both sides of the customer. I don't want to see it shut down,
yeah.
because of that. I don't know how you would accommodate that unless you give people a private marketplace or something. But that's my ramble on, I don't want to see it go away completely. People are
I,
so adverse to it. But I kind of wanted to just hear what you're seeing. Is there a region or what you've seen where the secondary and primary are really working together like they're supposed to?
yeah, I mean, I think you point out a really valid, reason for a marketplace,
Hmm.
between customers, to exist. You know, especially with
Right.
a sport like baseball. If you're a
Hmm.
season ticket holder, I mean, how many you have,
You
like
can't
80
go.
games that
Yeah.
you can't go to all of those, and so you need a way to, uh, it's good for the team to have, and it's good for the venue to have people in the
Yep.
stadium, right?
Yep.
You don't want empty seats. It's good for
Yep.
TV to not have empty seats. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, there's a bit of a paradox there because you know, the broadcaster wants people at home watching on
Yeah,
TV,
that's
but
true.
they
Yeah.
also don't want to be broadcasting an empty stadium because it looks
Yes.
terrible.
True.
Um, and you know, every year those teams go and ask people to put down a really big investment in season tickets, and you know, I think it would damage their product if you took that option away from fans. On the flip side of that, you know, I think you want it to be a really good quality customer experience. You want it to be safe. You want to feel confident that the ticket that you're buying from a season ticket holder is genuine, that it's valid
Hmm.
for that game, that you know, someone's not trying to sell the same ticket 5 times. And you know, I think having you know, marketplaces run by the team or the team's ticketing company or a partner that they've worked with, I think is the right way to go. I don't necessarily think you want it just out there, you know, on any site
Right.
being sold, because that introduces risk. It can affect your brand quite badly when things go wrong. It's a major problem for internationally popular sporting events. I know they have the problem at the Australian Open. They have it at Wimbledon and the US Open as well.
Right.
Um,
World
and
Cup,
you
I'm
know,
sure.
football tournaments, right? Football World Cups and all of those sorts of things, where people buy fake tickets on secondary market sites, and spend a lot of money on travel, you know, flying around the world to get to these
Hmm.
events, hotels, all of that sort of stuff, and then they get to the gate and they can't get in.
Yeah.
And so that's it's a terrible experience for the customer, and it's really bad for that event's brand that happens to those customers. And so those events, I know, have been actively working, you know, at the governmental level to try and protect their fans and protect consumers in general. And that's what you've seen happen, you know, in the UK. It's happened in Australia and in some other markets. I think in the US it's a lot more complicated because it's a state level issue, which obviously means you end up with lots of different laws in place in a big market, which is tricky.
Right.
But there's definitely a place for it, and I think, you know, StubHub, you know, has gone down that path, right? They've gone and
Yeah.
partnered directly
Yeah.
with teams. So
Yeah.
where teams were losing information about who was coming to the venue and what have you, they've gone and integrated systems, and um, the team is in the loop about who's selling and buying their tickets, and that lets them put incentive programs for their season ticket holders in place and all of those things. So that, I think, is a good thing. It's a valid reason for that market to exist.
Yeah. And
I
pricing
think
controls too,
there,
right? You've got some closed loop type of secondary, you know, I think marketplace is a nice word, right? Where,
yeah, yeah,
you know, the team or Broadway show, whoever's the stakeholder there, can have some pricing controls. So you're giving people an opportunity to shed tickets that they need to,
yeah.
you know, if they can't make it or whatever, without, you know, giving any incentive for, you know, a scalper to try to double the price. You can really,
E-
if you could control the
e-
price there, you know.
Exactly. So you see a lot of events moving towards that model where they set up a verified marketplace. They control the price, so they keep tickets at face value plus a re-transacting fee or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, you know, the original customer gets the full value of their ticket back, but can't, you know, try and profiteer off their ticket, and it works as a good customer service. As you said, there are people, you know, people are being asked to buy tickets a year or more in advance for things, and people's plans change, people's circumstances change, and they
Yeah,
can't go to an event
for
anymore.
sure.
It's
Yep.
it's just good customer service to offer something like that, for sure. And that's, you know, when we talk about TM shutting down their resale sites in Europe,
Hmm.
they've shut down their open market resale sites. They still have their verified fan resale service running through the main Ticketmaster website. So they had
Right.
acquired two other, you know, secondary market, you know, sort of open secondary market businesses over the years, and
Yep.
they've shut those down. But they're still offering a resale service. They've said in Australia, they offer a resale service in Australia that lets the customer price the ticket however they want. They've said they won't be shutting that down, and it doesn't really surprise me because that's one of their big revenue drivers. It's not surprising at all. And they've gone the verified fan route in the US as well. There's been some interesting things happening in the last little while. So the big brokers in the secondary market are now looking to buy the verified fan codes from customers ahead of an on sale.
Of course so they are.
Access their inventory. So all that's happened is the market has shifted, one step earlier in the chain.
Yep.
So that's a really tough thing to combat. And again, communication is important. So if you're saying to people, hey, when you buy a ticket, we'll be opening up a marketplace in the 3 months before the event that will let you sell off your ticket at face value if you can't go anymore, and you tell people who aren't able to buy a ticket that marketplace will be opening up and there'll be inventory available in there. Then again, you're setting up the conditions that signal to customers that there's another better option than going off to a third-party secondary site and buying a really inflated ticket. So again, you've got to communicate to the customer.
It's all coming back to that. That's the theme for today. But it's sadly, I just think we continually forget about the fans and until the day of the event, and then we're like, well, shoot, we've pissed them off, or till they jump on your Facebook wall and start posting things, and then everyone sort of goes into panic. Very reactive strategies. So I think a lot of what you're offering today are things to get in front of it, and use tools, more proactively. But I mean, we do make mistakes. We talking in our office, they're really watching what happened with Riot Fest this summer. That was the one where they went on sale when the ticketing provider had a major outage that lasted for a long time, and so they lost that buzz, and their demand dropped. And they still had some folks that got in, and bought tickets at that initial price, but then they ended up offering up a deeply discounted pass, kind of saying, hey, this is an apology that the on sale was botched. But the primary buyers, those first buyers, are pretty ticked off about it because it's about half. And last check in my office, that's still going on. So it's like, it's really nice to be able to look at other people's mistakes and go, oh, I'm a pretty far distance from that. I can see what happened there, but there's got to be other strategies, and we've talked a little bit about it. What do you see as far as like maybe putting together bundles and packages, or somehow putting an offer together that wasn't there in the beginning, other than just here's a pass and now it's 50% off,
Yeah. Look, I think if you botch something in that way, like you don't deliver your service to the customers, and you get some customers that were caught up in that and pay the full price, then I think in that situation you've got to figure out some way of making things good with those original customers, and maybe you can't necessarily go back and refund them down to the discount. You might be able to do that. It depends on
that's rough.
On the commercials of your event.
That's rough.
Maybe those people, you can go back and say, hey, we're sorry we screwed this up. We're going to be putting together these packages for on sale. We'd like to offer you this package component free of charge as a make good. Maybe you can do that. But I think you're right. When things are not working out as planned, and whether it's because you screwed something up, technically with the on sale or in your operations, or it's just that the demand is not there, I think you really have to be willing to work together with your venue, your ticketing agent, your promoter,
Hmm.
work together to do something, because everyone has an interest in getting more people to that event. And if
Right.
you can package up something in the venue, if you can give people you know, free parking, or get them some, you know, the first couple of drinks free, or
Right.
do a
Preload
happy
some
hour
money on the
before the event.
wristband. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you know, do a half price happy hour, you know, earlier on than maybe you'd normally open the doors, and get people into the venue earlier, but give them something in return. There's lots of things you can come up with that you can add on to just the ticket, um,
Yep.
and you know, do something other than just dropping the price. I think
We used to see that a lot. I mean,
um,
Groupon used to be a huge deal here. And when they first came in, if you put your event on Groupon, you had to cut the price in half. So if you were selling
yeah,
$40 tickets, Groupon had to be 20 bucks. And we saw
yeah,
people, event
and
promoters
you
get a
only
little
got half of
creative
that,
with
right?
that. Yes, and then you only got half of that. So it was really, you were getting
Yeah,
25%, and they were doing it to get the data,
yeah,
to try to boost sales. It bites you in the butt because, if people know you do it all the time, they're just going to wait for the Groupon, if you don't
right.
have the demand, obviously. But what we did see people do was create special offers, and as long as Groupon allowed it, rather than just say, okay, we're going to have a half price ticket, they would say, well, that $40 ticket is now, we're going to bundle four of them together, call it a family pack, add some, hot dogs and soda, add some parking, and then you're not fully just cutting it in half. You're just creating, and then
Yeah,
sometimes they would even say, well, that package is now valued at, 200 bucks, we're going to sell it for 100. So you're
yeah,
technically, you're looking like you're cutting it in half, but it's not really available anywhere for full price. So those are some techniques, as long as, you're working with, if you're working with Groupon or any of those other types of discounted services, which, have a whole set of other issues. If you're doing it, you can get creative with how you present. And I think putting packages together is really something that can help move inventory and make a ticket
yeah,
that's not going more desirable. Than It's not always just about the price for people. Maybe they
yeah,
just don't
yeah.
see your show.
And 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 yeah, I think the other thing you can do is you can be creative about who you can partner with in your market on those sort of efforts. So Groupon was obviously a good example of it, but
Yeah.
really they were a company with a big email database, right?
Yep,
That
that's
was
it.
their selling
Hmm.
point. They could reach a whole bunch of customers. But you've got a bunch of those in any market you look at. If you spend the time to go out and connect with those, so it might be local universities, it might be the season ticket holders of a sporting team that shares a venue with where you're selling your concerts, or it might be um, student groups, local sporting teams, or community groups, or
Right. Yeah.
at the high end of the scale, it's holders of credit cards or bank customers of certain banks, and all of those sort of partnerships you can develop. They give you access to a group of customers. You give them an offer. It has
Yeah.
value
That's it.
for that partner, because their customers get something special, but you're not flooding the market with cheap tickets and signaling that, again, like you said with Groupon, if you just sit out and wait, you'll get the discounted ticket.
Right.
And then the
Yeah.
other thing you can do is, if you go out with a big discount, which sometimes you have to do,
Hmm.
um, go out to people and say, um, we've got tickets in the back row of the venue.
Yeah.
Even if you're only three-quarters full, sell them the
Right.
back row at the discounted price,
Right.
right? And even if they turn up and they sit in the back, four empty rows in front of them, the signal you've sent is, hey, I can hang out and take a risk at getting a cheap ticket, but I'm going to get stuck in the back row, and maybe it'll fill up and I'll be stuck in the back row. Maybe I'll get there and I can sneak forward a few rows once the show starts. But
Right.
you're making a clear distinction between, this show is not selling well and we're just going to discount everything, to, hey,
Yep.
there's some tickets left. If you want to sit way
Hmm.
down the back, you can get a cheap deal.
And that doesn't anger then the person that's got a really good seat if they're sitting there going, well, I paid $100.
Exactly.
They paid 50, but I'd rather be in my seat. And you've not diminished the value then of that initial purchase. So that makes,
Exactly.
a ton of
Exactly.
me. You release the second row at half price from the first row, you got a problem. So
Right.
awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. We've seen it. We've seen it all. So, well, we're just about at the top of the hour, and so we're gonna try to wrap it up. I wanted to just ask you a little bit about a feature that the TicketForce and Ticket Tech platform. I think Access may have something similar called Invite a Friend. Um, and
Mhm.
it just has less to do with pricing, I think, and more to do with inventory control. But, it's where fans can buy tickets and then hold seats that are adjacent to theirs for a specified time frame. And then they can invite
Yeah.
friends to buy them via Facebook or email. And then the other one is,
Mhm.
we call it Full House, where you've got empty adjacent seats. And you can offer
Yeah.
those to existing ticket buyers. And sometimes those offers go out and reduce the price. So,
Yeah.
just real quick as we close up, how can marketing strategies like that help us better, have sellouts, lock up inventory, and can they be used to test out pricing strategies? Like, can you alter the price on some of those to see, how quickly they go? What have you seen on that?
I, I, I think definitely on something like Full House, it's another way when you do need to go out with a discount to offer it to people who have they've committed to your show already. So again, it's a way of avoiding that issue where um, you're annoying those early buyers by going out with a
Right.
discount. You can give them the first dibs on that discount,
That's
right, and
true.
get
That's
another
true.
ticket for a friend who wants to come with them. I
Right.
think as a longer term strategy, invite a friend is great because it helps you build your database. You have people coming in and buying tickets where their friends were buying them on their behalf in the past. So,
Mhm.
building your data set and your ability to communicate well with that data set is really important in the long term to giving you as many options as possible on your pricing strategy and your
Yeah.
sales strategy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is an inventory control thing as well. It can help you it can help show additional demand in the market that you may not have seen.
That's true.
If
Because
if
you've
if
got a
one
couple
person's
seats tied
buying all the
up.
tickets and
Yep. Yep.
right, right, and it's if you're buying the tickets for your friends and you're not 100% certain that someone's going to come and it's an expensive ticket, then you'll probably not buy the ticket rather than buy it. Whereas invite a friend gets around that problem. It
Yeah.
takes all the risk out for the original buyer,
So you can sort of help
and
judge
gives the
too, if you've got Invite a Friend turned on and you're doing your on sale, how many seats are being held, and how many people are participating in that is going to be critical data
correct.
in knowing what your
Yeah,
demand is
yeah,
for
you need
sure.
you have to be able to see what's happening there in real time to know if you need to dial the parameters up and down, turn it on, turn it off, all of those things. So that's really
Yep.
important.
Fantastic. Well, hey, it's been good talking to you, and I think you've
And you,
given some people some great worldwide perspective, some based on your experience, and hopefully we've given the audience today some really practical strategies. Sometimes you just have to try things and see what happens, and I
yeah,
think getting some information out like this is really helpful to customers and the ticketing market as a whole. So I very much appreciate you sharing your experience with us and having the time to sit down and chat with us. It's been great, and to the listeners, if you're made it all the way to the end here, you can certainly submit questions to us at any time, and we can get answers back to you as well. And future topics that would be helpful to you, we'd love to hear from you. You can just shoot Taylor at ticketforce.com a message if you've got future topics you'd like to hear about. But Greg, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and talking with us. And the information has been wonderful, and we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
no trouble. It's a pleasure as always.
Thanks so much. All right. Bye-bye.